Here, let's do, wait, opening music time. But I'm not in a fun mood. Please, I want opening music time. I don't respond to tantrums. Opening music time? Alright. Bing bong, willy wong. Bing bing bong bong, bing bing bong. Bing bong, willy wong. Bing bing bong bong, bing bing bong. And the audience went wild. Wing wong, willy wong. Bing bing bong bong, bing bing bong. Wing wong, willy wong. Bing bing bong bong, bing bing bong. No. All of Washington. And now that we've gotten that straight. Yep. Super cool. So hip, so cool. I'm both Hans and Franz. And I am here to pump you up. Is my impersonation working on you? Do you feel ready for this? Okay. Alright. Bing bong, willy wong. Bing bing bong bong, bing bing bong bong. Bing bong, willy wong. Bing bing bong bong, wing wing wong wong. Bing bong, willy wong. Bing bing bong bong, wing wing wong wong. And now, for another chapter, the Dragon Esquire, an only newly acquired name of convenience. I'm here to tell you that I am your own dad, in a very real and really violent way. What? No, we're not fathering all of these. What, there's 5 people who are listening. No. Bing bong, willy wong, bing bing bong bong, wing wing wong. Okay, why am I here? I'm here right now because now that we've gotten through our cool and hip opening music, do they need something like to look at? I do not sponsor this beverage. So let's see. I was thinking about the Brady Bunch. Has anyone watching the channel right now watched the Brady Bunch? Marsha? Come on. When it's time to change, you got to rearrange. Marsha. The little blonde girl with the pigtails who looks like the Dr. Seuss figurine from Sueville. Anyways, you know what I'm talking about. Whoville. When it's time to change, you've got to rearrange. That's when one of the Brady boys was going through puberty. And he got famous while he was going through puberty, and that was the song. And so I feel super proud of myself right now because I feel like very few people, only the select elite, are in on the Time to Change song and really watch the Bradys that closely. Now, I'm here to talk to you today, although I used the hook of the Brady song, which I karaoke so well, I know you're going to stick around for a minute. I actually came to discuss the Brady car. The Brady Bunch car. It is a station wagon, quasi beat up. If it had like little rotors in it for like a bicycle or something like that, and Fred Flintstone could like bicycle and pedal it, this is the kind of car that an Amish family wouldn't be afraid to have. Okay? And hold on a second. All right, hold on. No. Okay. Right. If it didn't have an engine, an Amish family, if they could make it themselves, they probably would have a car that looked like a station wagon. And the Brady Bunch one. And how did this come up? I was driving down the street and I passed somebody on the street, and all of a sudden it was like the environment turned into like Normalville. all right? But not in a bad way. What is Normalville? Normalville is like, the last time I saw it was like 1992. Now, if you're into the guy who wrote the book about the Aztec or Mayan New Year and how it switched in 2012, he put all his theories and said that the beginning of the shift started in 1992, all right? Now, I'm not into astrology. I think all that shit's a bunch of bullshit myself, right? But I am not a Sagittarius, if you know what I'm saying. So this guy puts it together. 1992, a lot of people feel that there was a shift in the fabric of reality that started around 92, but it didn't hit its pinnacle and start to show evidence till 1999, okay? And in 1999, a lot of people felt like something, it was in stages. It was like 92, 95, 99. And I'm not the only one. I've looked it up on the internet, and there's a small elite crew of us. Even Anne Rice. Okay, you want to know who else lost their minds? When I had a fucking possession style religious experience that I will only tell you was negative for the time being, that's all you need to know about it. Anne Rice, the vampire novelist who I read all the time, and I memorized like the first paragraph of the Vampire Lestat, like I'd read it so much. And she had a conversion as well that later on, you know, like her books didn't read as good during it. It read like it was like possession, like it wasn't her. And further then, who else? Oh, Prince Rogers Nelson, the musician. He was in that period of time, just a little after, okay, because he had this experience around 99. Around 2002, LA Times reported that he was taking his limo around and knocking on the door for the Jehovah's Witnesses. Yes, I am not lying. Go look it up. I kid you not. Artists and people who were not Christian, who had already explored it and had their own take on it, okay, had these bizarre type conversions that were forced on them in a period of time. You're not going to believe me, but it happened. There's evidence that this happened. I had been writing poetry from the age, at least, I remember very clearly at 7, every night I would write my mom a poem. My mom was my muse, think what you want, and I would put it under my pillow, and then I made a song up, a little ditty, and she had to recite the ditty in order to take the poem, and she would actually really recite it, because I used to sleep with my eyes open, and all the adults would trip out, and they said it was freaky, because I would trace them with my eyes, and my eyes would never shut all the way when I slept, so they were never really convinced I was asleep. And so, but even I stopped writing poetry and started transcribing the book of Isaiah. Oh my God. Like, what the fuck was going on? You don't believe me. Something was in the water. I don't know what happened. Something very strange was going on in the world. And some of us had these bizarre experiences, okay? Now, my dad is a guy who, now that he's reposed, I can share with you that he was a con artist, specifically poker. He had different outfits and disguises and tax identification numbers, okay? He's been reposed for a moment now, so I can't get in trouble for having found this out by accident. It is not my fault. You can't get me for it. I didn't get any big sums from him, but it turns out that my dear old dad had little old lady outfits. He would put them in hermetically sealed? Is that the right word? No oxygen could get in. I found them once. Oh my God. He would win up to the amount you're allowed to win in poker at all these different casinos, and he would clear it out in disguises back in the 90s. But he had an experience he told me about. This is a full-blown con artist, poker player, said he was at a Calvary chapel that he went to because a friend invited him and it was good for a business connection, and he was just acting curious. He didn't mean anything. He wasn't even listening to the preacher, and he said that he blacked out and woke up at the altar. Blacked out and woke up at the altar. Not because he'd been converted. He couldn't remember what happened. Okay? Now, it's going to get weirder. One of the pastors I had, all right, named David Fowles. Now, this guy was a biker, and And I'm sure he probably never left the club, even though he never flaunted it while he was a pastor. But everybody in the church like knew that his story was that he was running Bullhead City with a gang out in the wilderness, and for years, and they could sleep places at their girlfriends' houses. This is back in the 70s and stuff, because he'll tell you what happened to him. Because he would say it over the pulpit that he would run with his crew, and they could sleep at their girlfriends' houses in town in Laughlin and shit, but they would travel around and get into trouble, and they would even just straight up crash on the beaches in Bullhead City. And he said one day he went to his girlfriend's house. It was around the early 90s, if I'm not mistaken, and he was over at her house, just showed up waiting for her to come home, and he blacked out until the following day and essentially woke up a Christian the next day. He had to ask people what happened because her entire apartment was torn to shreds, and people were saying that they heard some kind of screaming from the trailer, because she lived in a trailer, and that they could hear it for miles around, but that it was so frightening that they thought it was supernatural, and it was in the middle of the night, and so people just stayed away. They thought that the next morning, if he never came out, they'd call the police, they might find his body or something, but instead he had become possessed. So like with my dad, he had it happen like for a 20-minute burst, and then he would get bursts of it. Like he would get bursts of possession where he'd turn into a Christian temporarily, and the only way he could get out of it was if he played poker or gambled. I can't prove that to you, but that's what it looked like. When he would start to get the urge to turn into a Christian against his will, he'd get out there and he'd play poker, or he would do something that was a little bit corrupt. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm just coming up with this shit. And so, anyways, I'm not shitting you. Where am I? I don't play. What is Roblox? People are like, Roblox. I shouldn't even read this. Oh, so where was I going? Lego Urego. Yes, I was gonna go to the point of the Brady Bunch. So I'm driving down the street. Man, that was a rabbit trail, but it's all gonna come on home together for a minute. But it's just gonna be an illusion. It's gonna then fan right back on out. So this is a really cute dog. Someone has a little cattle dog over here on the corner. Oh my god. Okay, so cattle dogs are cute. They're so speckled, and when you pet your cattle dog, you're showing the neighborhood he is actually an extra cute little dog. Whatever. Alright. I got distracted there, audience. Big audience. Little audience. So, the Brady Bunch car. So I'm driving down the street, and I pass this guy, and for a minute, the mood shifts to like 1992 kind of. Like right before the weird religious fits started happening even to other normal people. Okay? And, so, like, basically, I felt the vibe of 92 again. It was like when I was driving past his car for a minute, it was like even the air and the way that the cement looked all kind of looked normal again before the weird vibe got in the air. What is the weird vibe? My dad was a full-blown, like, there was things about and for him to have an involuntary conversion, for it to have happened, from what I understand, to a pastor, for it to have happened to me, I gotta tell you that it should scare you a little bit, because it happened to Anne Rice. And I think a lot of times when people look at their conversion, they don't really look at it like, when you look at the time you got converted to a Christian, you should look at several things in your life. The quality of your friendships, the quality of your relationship with your job and your work, the quality of your art or your craft, right? So how's your craft going? How is your relationships going? How is your finances? Like, you don't have to be rich, you don't have to be poor, but you gotta like at least have something that you do, right? So like there's 3 areas of your life at least, right, that you need. And if those 3 go down when the Christian zeal hits you, that means the fruit is in the pudding, baby. Anne Rice's books were not as good. I stopped writing my own poetry. People that I know who were hit with this were not as creative and not as interesting, and it was like an involuntary hit. All right? Now, I'm going to tell you something that's going to freak you the fuck out, and you're not going to believe me. So I'm going to code it so that I don't get pulled off YouTube. If you watch Soft White Underbelly, just recently there was a lady on there, and she was talking about how her family, how her grandmother trafficked her to her uncles and her family members, and her sister got pregnant by incest. All this shit happened to her. Like, it's not like she went out there and decided. She was born into this shit, okay? It's easy for you to be judgmental, but if your family has survived to this present day and age, then they have been involved in what I call survival at any cost, and you have a bunch of creepy people in your family too, and if you think you don't, you are so full of shit. Your eyes might just turn brown. I don't know what to tell you. So I go like, I'm listening to her, and she's like, look, these people, what they get high off of is taking someone who has a little bit of hope in their eyes and seeing that hope extinguished. And doing it over and over again. And it's the death of hope. It's the death, people will call it the death of love. That's one of the code words for it, but it's really the death of hope. The word hope is where we get the word, so losing hope is the word despair. It comes from the word, if you hear the word despair, the root of despair is actually spes. Spes is a Greek and then a Roman deity that was a personification. She would hold a flower in her hand and hitch her skirt up with her left foot going forward. And it was a military propaganda. Actually, it wasn't used by the Greeks. I have to apologize for that mistake there. It was used by the Romans as a military-industrial complex propaganda of a personification of hope. And her name was in Latin, Spes, S-P-E-C-S, so Spes. So that's where we get despair. It means the lack of spes, right? Now, the Greeks looked at this quality of spes as being cruel. That it's just straight up, it's cruelty. The Greeks were a little more philosophical, a little less military-industrial complexical. And so they believed that the concept of spes, okay, was actually cruelty because it prolonged human suffering. And that when you gave up the idea of a golden dawn was when you would finally stop getting harassed. In fact, basically, you have to get negative enough to drive away the bad people, one way or the other. Because if you're super positive, you're going to attract negativity. And if you're super negative, you're going to attract positivity. That's magnetism. So, like, you have to find a way to get negative enough, even if it just means, like, you get stoic and you get pretty kind of like a bit of hopelessness, as they might call it, the gray rock of not feeling that excessive hope. In order to, that's what the gray rock method is. It's you're not expressing that hope anymore around those people, okay? That's how you get out of a narcissistic situation. You gray rock them, right? You are taking, it's not the same as despair, but it kind of is. Like, you're taking the spes out, whatever you get hope from, whatever is truly meaningful to you, vulnerable to you, that is not involved in your interaction with that person anymore. In fact, they even recommend you invent an introject. Invent someone, her name's Sally, and she's a mean receptionist or whatever, and she's on the backside, she's a dude, but she'll punch you out, and like, she handles like all the narcissists, right? Like, you just come up with someone who you think is going to deal with them. Like, I would tell you who I came up with, but she's so good at her job that I don't want to tell you who she is, because I took mine from a TV show, all right? I went and I watched a TV show, and I found the most dangerous mother figure in all of modern filmography. The one that would kill everybody in the world for her child. And I made her my introject and made her my mom. I did. I said, that's it. So that's what Richard Grannon says. You come up with somebody that's going to deal with these people for you. Because that person will deal with them for you. You may have a couple of people who do it. So the thing is that I was like, what is it that happened in 92? Besides the fact that people got consumed with religious zeal. I could tell you. There's these weird cars that started to come out, okay? In the 80s, cars still look normal. 70s, cars look normal. 60s, normal. 50s, normal. 40s, normal. All right. In the 90s, they started coming out with these cars that looked like white puffy sneakers, the kind that rappers wear, like Eminem. Like the kind that my grandmother would wear the same kind of sneakers almost identically to what rappers, like the white tennis shoes they wear. And I literally, when I see them, I immediately go, Grandma, oh my God. My grandmother was very stylish. She never looked like a grandma. She never acted like a grandmother. I don't think she liked that name even. And, but she would wear these shoes that I just thought were so awful. And when I look at rappers, I go, oh my God, my grandmother was wearing these shoes since the 90s. The exact fucking brands even. Like, they look identical. My grandmother, I can't stand them. They're my grandmother's shoes. So, sorry, Grandma, but I don't like the shoe. Probably because you always wore it. It looks terrible, but they started coming out with cars that became these plasticky versions of cars. No longer did you have this square, sleek Cadillac, right? People started coming out with these poofy, weird plastic numbers that look like tennis shoes, but they're cars. Like if you got two of them, if you were like a 20-foot tall giant and you wanted to go rollerblading in a really high hip outfit, you would just go out there and you would find a couple of these SUVs and you just plop them right on your feet and you'd go skating up and down Highway 62 or Old Woman Springs. Yes, you would. Well, I guess you should all feel very lucky that the Giants have not returned for your cars to claim them as shoes. So, where am I going with this one? I'm going with this, that in the Brady Bunch era, you have a family living in what we would now say is arguably a mini mansion. The Brady Bunch lived in a mini mansion. Their house looked, okay, I'm a real estate agent. Their house looked like it was, you would say, I think a mini mansion is between once you start to go above, it's 4,000 or 5,000 square feet, you're hitting mini mansion. Somewhere in that range, right? Their house looked like it was right between 3,000 and 4,000 square feet. It looked big. It looked mini mansionville, and the front yard added to it. And here they had what arguably, by our standards today, was a fucking beat up little station wagon. An old beat up station wagon. And nowadays, so I pass this guy's car and I get this 92 vibe and I'm like, oh my God, it's like reality again. And then it's just like pre-religious. And then as I'm driving off, there's this vibe, like something about his car. Like, I don't know if somebody else was thinking something bad about his car, or he was wondering if his car didn't look hip enough. And I was like, dude, I don't know where that came from. But I got to tell you, in 1992, people weren't fucking obsessed with how their car looked yet. That is right when the fad started. All right. I noticed it because everybody back in the early 90s, late 80s, you would have to save up, even in a normal middle-class family, your parents wouldn't buy you a car. You would have to save up money, and then maybe on your birthday or something, your parents would match the amount of money you saved, and you'd buy a used car. But in the early 90s, car lots started selling brand new cars to teenagers who were as young as 16 years old, as long as they'd had a job for 6 months, and they had a down payment. And people's parents were giving them the money for the down payment, and the kids had a job for 6 months, they'd be like, fine, you can have this brand new car. And it was happening up and down the blocks. Like, all these teenagers were driving up in these little fluffy rounded plastic looking tennis shoe looking cars, and that were brand new. And I didn't get jealous. I was just like, these are weird looking cars, like what's going on here? But those cars came out at the same time as this weird religious thing where people just get possessed. Now, back to the story. The lady who grew up in this incestuous family on soft white underbelly, you have to go watch the interview. Basically, she explains how people like that, they go after hope, because the Greeks got it. Like, that kind of hope is just to keep you have to gray rock narcissists, right? Like, you have to give up. But the Romans were trying to use, don't ever give up on anyone, not even the narcissist, as like a propaganda method that was then taken over by the Christians, so that the Christians could replace accountability, right, with religion, and use it as a state-manufactured military-industrial complex slavery mechanism. I don't know. The video dropped off for a minute. I was on a David Graeber kick. I was lit. Debt the first 5,000 years, and coinage was for prostitution in the early days. Nobody used coinage to trade before that. You would trade with goods and things that you actually worked for. It was legitimate. You had it. It was obvious you didn't steal it. Nobody needed to use money until they started using prostitution, slavery, and standing armies to keep fueling the prostitution and the slavery. So coinage really literally is a form of anonymous trade for people who are utilizing slave prostitutes. So when we think of the Bible and it says, oh, the Antichrist is going to get rid of your coined money and make you wear a mark that makes you accountable for where you got your money and what kind of work you did and where you're trading, so that you can be monitored, so you can't just go around making slaves of people, whoever you want, then the Christians are going to turn them into an enemy. Now, am I saying you should get a tattoo on your hand? No, I'm not saying you should get a tattoo on your hand. But I can see how the idea would take hold, that in order to stop the military-industrial complex, the slavery, the this, the that, the other, no, don't just do a Gaddafi and back your own gold and end up with your penis down your throat. The Antichrist would come up with a fucking worldwide religion and undo all the money. Which means that he would have to have something to give the perverts and the pedos to replace what they're used to taking. That would be more addictive. The fentanyl of the narcissist world, but not fentanyl. Okay, not fentanyl. We're talking about something that hasn't been invented yet. Something like True Blood for vampires, but worse. Something that every narcissist on the street and every pedo on the street would be like, don't ever taste that shit, because you'll never fucking work for the other side again. We'll never see your face again. Everything you know on us will turn into traitor information, and then pretty soon you're just going to give up. And you're going to buckle and you're going to go to the Antichrist, and then you're going to hand in your money and you're going to get tracked in order to get a little taste of something. Right? I'm just saying, it's like, you see how these stories start. I mean, like, how do people get on these, like, maladaptive daydreams in the first place, right? So, where was I going with it? When you're sitting in a solid metal car from, like, the 1990s, I like my car, okay? I like my car. It doesn't, but if I don't want anything to happen to it. But if I had the chance to get, like, a Crown Vic or something like that from back in that day, I wouldn't say no. I mean, especially if I got a good deal on it. I like them. Maybe a Cadillac, maybe, whatever. Because those cars from those days have a better vibe. I like my car. I'm not putting it down. It's all right. You're a fine car. You're a fine car. I'm not saying that. But, like, who wouldn't, like, have a second vehicle that was a perfectly restored, like, 1990s vehicle, just, like, drive around and act like you're in the 1990s? Ozzy Osbourne had a 1990s room. Did you know that? Dude, I mean, I thought about going back to the 1990s, the house I was living in before all this happened, buying that house, decorating it like it's the 1990s, getting myself a 1990s vehicle, putting my TV stations on like to where, getting a setting for your cable, paying to have it to where Saturday morning is cartoons, prime time is at this time, this is at this time, this is at this time. Oh, you weren't home by 6, you can't watch X-Files today. Oh, just go check the button and see if there's messages. Like, and once a day, call people back. And if you don't call back in 24 hours, they get upset, right? And they have to write you a letter. And what else? What else? And there was still music coming out that didn't sound, wasn't the same, and that there were still new actors coming out, and the same ones were there, but there was new stuff coming out at a certain rate that has trickled to barely anything. And like, also, you heard about things a lot more slowly. I know I shouldn't care about the movie stars thing, but back then, nobody told you. There was no concept that any of these fucking movie stars were involved in any kind of fucking hocus pocus mumbo jumbo. But most people didn't watch them enough for it to really be that big of a deal, because the average person in the 90s or the 80s really only watched TV for like maybe an hour a day. Maybe. Like, you'd go run around town, you do your shit, you go to work, you come home, you hang out with your people, you do whatever, and then like some special show comes on like once or twice a week. People now, they sit on their phone and watch YouTube. I do it too for like, how long a day? We're always on the TV now. Like, you saw these people were such a small part of your life in the 90s that they were a bigger part in one way, but in the other part they weren't as big. And then the scandals weren't all over the place, and people used to wear huge bows in their hairs. And I guess we should know about the scandals, but the truth is because of the Dunbar number, humans aren't capable of caring about more than like 150 people at any given time. So it's better, because of what your nervous system capacity is, that you spend the 55 to 250 hours it takes to get to know someone in person in a win-win, feel-good scenario, and that like if you run into some kind of interpersonal abuse, you deal with it yourself. Because hearing about it on a scale of thousands and thousands of people are involved is meant to overload your nervous system and your brain so that you give up. You don't even deal with the people in your own life anymore, because it's like, if there's this many bad people, like, who the fuck wants to deal with it? Whatever.